Hey, Lou.
Howdy, Zach. Welcome back. Day 4.
Day 4 on that, indeed. Welcome back, everyone. This is day 4 of building a software factory. We're building Memo, a Notion-style note-taking app, entirely built on Owner with AI agents and automation loops. Today, Lou's back. We missed you yesterday, but we had a good chat with Chris. We went over the product spec and how the product spec ultimately evolves into a working app. We looked into the 52 PRs that were merged already. We're now at a stage where the initial outline and the initial product spec is actually live. So you can go into, and we'll actually have a look into that in a second. Today, we're looking a bit more what's under the hood of the machine and what makes things happen. We go into the automations, look into what's running, what's completely automated already, what's still a bit manual, and dive a bit into this, and also how agents collaborate with each other at the moment. All right, maybe before we go directly into the automations, it's interesting to bring up the actual app in case you haven't seen it yet. So let me just pull this.
Yes, show us. I haven't actually seen it since yesterday as well. So,
all right, there we go. Cool. So fairly bare bones. Not much here yet, except for a more or less functional outline of what we're trying to build. So we have a workspace overview. We have the ability to create notes, which is great. If you have already tested, you've probably noticed that a couple of things are not super smooth yet, but those we will fix and address over the next few days. But as we can see, the main outline works. We can create pages, we can create sub-pages, give everything titles. So that's quite nice. And as I said, we'll dive into some of the UI bugs, as you can see here in the next episode. But to go back into how we actually build things, the core of everything are the automations. So let's go back into the owner dashboard and look a little bit into the different automations and go through what each of these automations actually do, how they run, what's manual, what's automated. Maybe it makes sense to go a little bit along the chain of how we build. So we've already touched base on the feature builder in the previous episodes and talked how the feature builder itself defines the features or defines the issues that we then ultimately build. You can see it has a pretty extensive definition how to work with our label convention across the app to create the issues and ultimately also the bugs, the bug reports that we're running. So again, you can find the exact prompt in the repo that is linked on the website and go into the detail here. What's interesting here is we currently run this on a schedule. So after we implemented the initial product spec, we changed this into like an hourly automation, which basically goes in, reviews if there's any user-reported bugs to triage them, or if there are any new feature requests. So once we build out the app for more features, this will really go to work. I think the next one that's interesting to look at is the PR reviewer, which is ultimately the core. So whenever the feature planner goes in, let's start with the feature builder before we go into PR review. The feature builder actually picks up all the issues that the feature planner opens. This one also works in a number of ways. We run it hourly, but you can also trigger them manually if you wanted to, but obviously manual work defeats the purpose here. So once the feature builder picks up, creates a pull request, we then go into the PR review, obviously, and there we actually have a loop. So our PR reviewer, maybe we go into the automation.
Can I ask a question as well, Zach? So how are you currently doing so I saw yesterday with Chris, you created a plan, you created issues.
Yes.
It makes a lot of sense. Is then the factory here in terms of like feature creation, then is all of that through GitHub issues? And then are you yet at the point where the factory is almost raising its own feature requests, or is all of that still going through you? And you're breaking those down into almost like using GitHub issues and things to drive the implementation side of it.
Yes. So the GitHub issues are still at the core.
Yeah.
I think you need to differentiate between new features and kind of fixes to existing features. So new features are still at the stage where we would define them. So we can raise directly in GitHub to create a new feature. We then, through the feature automations, so the feature planner will pick up a user-generated issue and either go work on it or request more information if it's a high-level feature and it requires more information. The loop that we already have fully automated is in the PR reviewer, where we go in, we check if everything was implemented to the spec that we gave it. And if not, we have a conversation that basically triggers another review or more work. Maybe we go into the view quickly of a already merged PR and have a look. So here we can see this was like one of the features, the lexical editor that was being implemented. We can see how our agents actually wrote the spec, what it should implement, how it should work. Our testing requirements. And then we can see a conversation. So once the PR was opened, we triggered a review. This review created comments and conversations that, based on our rule set, need to be resolved before we can merge the branch. And while the conversations and the comments are not resolved, we will have our loops firing and improve the code until all the issues are fixed.
I think it's worth underscoring there as well, Zach, right? Like this has your name on it, but like as you say, none of these are created by you. Like the PR is raised.
No, I have
agent review, agent resolves its own comments, etc., until
correct.
the issue
they do run. If you look at the automation view, you can see the identity. It's currently attached to me as my identity, but it runs fully automatically. So you can also see the individual runs that have run are run as myself, but they are automated agent loops. So I'm not touching anything directly on GitHub. The only thing that we do in GitHub is ultimately we can open bug reports. We can require new features to be built. But everything else happens through the automations or through the owner chat and the interface where we can discuss improvements that are needed.
Can I jump in as well and ask as well, Zach? So like, how does your development loop look like, right? Because I think we introduced this in the start on the first of the series. We talked about like the background agents website, and it's actually changed now, but they had this like phrase in it, like moving from in the loop to on the loop. Yes. It's kind of like what I'm observing here is like, this is exactly it. Like you're now not in the loop, you're on the loop. You're designing the feedback loops as opposed to implementing the feedback loops. I'd be curious to know like how your day is already changing now. Like, are you spending your time then reviewing comments and then providing feedback into your automations?
Pretty much. So I think right now we're still in this on-ramp phase where we're even trying to figure out to get the automations work as efficient as possible. This is actually a pretty good example. This is the request we just looked at. And if we scroll down, we see that the automation added the needs human label. This means it's kind of hit a wall. It can't progress without human review. And in this case, it actually turned out that it was not an issue that it wouldn't be able to fix itself. So the workflow then was to go into owner, open the chat, give it the link to the pull request, and have it do a review why it hit this limitation. And then ultimately we can see that it fixed the pull request, but it also in the same conversation went in to make an improvement itself to the automation and registered the automation itself into the owner automations, updated the prompts, and then adjusted. In this case, we're using a PR Shepherd automation to review any PRs that are stale or that haven't been touched in a long time to make the changes that we need. In this case, rebase.
Could you break that one down, Zach? The PR Shepherd, what is that one doing? I like the sound of it.
So PR Shepherd is basically a fail-safe mode that runs currently on a schedule about once an hour. The idea behind it is that for PRs like the other one that have hit like a needs human situation, the Shepherd actually reviews it on a secondary loop to assess whether or not the initial assessment was correct and fixes any issues that the agent itself can fix. So this is basically just another fail-safe mode for us to make sure that nothing goes stale and anything that hasn't been touched in a long time, either through, for example, failed automations. This can happen as well sometimes. An automation run can fail and then fall through the cracks. So this is basically what fixes anything that goes into this mode and fixes it from there.
Yeah, you see a lot of the usage of the word like self, and it's like self-healing, self-driving, etc. And I feel like this is like really playing into that then, where the system itself is self-regulating. This is where I think we talked about this in one of the previous episodes where I talked, especially my definition of software factory is this, whereby you're away from the computer. I don't know, maybe a merge conflict happens or there's a code comment happening, etc. The external world changes. Maybe there's a vulnerability that's then been patched, and the software factory is just stepping in to do that work for you, which is really nice because you see that come to life here. And that for me is really the aim of the game. Like, how can you just have it do as much of that as possible? For me, at least, as well, there comes these specific work things as well that you can automate really well. And I don't know about you, but I start to get, as I develop more like this, I get more and more impatient, whereby, you go to a PR, if it has a merge conflict, you're like, why? That could be automated. You go to a PR and it has a build failure. Why? That could be automated. You go to the PR, it doesn't have test coverage. And you start to think, okay, great. So for every time I go to a PR, if you are doing still human review at the PR stage, all of those things can be done, right? And every time you look at a PR and think, this needs better test coverage, or the architecture is not correct, or it didn't listen to this, you can then set up an automation to patch that. And then that's really then the aim of the game, is just finding all of those gaps and then just driving the loop faster and faster.
100%. It also creates the redundancy, right? To make sure that your primary loop, well, hopefully it's designed as best as possible, has a fallback that you can rely on. And ultimately, where we will go to is self-improvement, and that's what you already touched base on. So we have an automation here that hasn't been run yet, and we'll probably launch this in the next few days, probably next week. And this is really intended to be an auditor for all the automations that we have. Review the code, review the automations, review the automation runs, and then there's a self-improvement loop and suggestions what we can ultimately improve with the existing automations. So for example, when we come to the PR review, are there any reviews that are inefficient? Are comment resolutions are done in an efficient way? Is our UI verification done in an efficient way? Is there anything that we have redundant? For example, we already know that in the UI verifier, we do a step that is already implemented in the PR reviewer. So should we keep it? Should we remove it? These are assessments that the automation can then give us, and the automation auditor will assess for us as well. I think this ties it quite nicely back into how can we drive this autonomously and make it a factory that ships itself.
Yeah, one thing I would add to that from my own experience as well is I now find myself also reaching for slightly different forms of review. So I have some personal automations as well. Like I have an automation review on a lot of my PRs for architecture. So what I often find that, you start looking at a lot of these diffs, these agents are raising lots of changes. You start almost going up the org chart. So you're no longer a developer, then you're managing agents. But then if you start to think about what's above that, and if you challenge yourself to even think of, how would I manage an organization of 100 or even 1,000 engineers, and you're more of an architect, that itself is a really interesting frame of reference, because then you start to think, well, actually, at like the pull request or lower levels, I actually want to know, is this breaking any of my domain boundaries? Is it crossing any domain boundaries, etc.? Is it introducing any sort of fundamental issues? And then what you can do is then have automations that also give you, comments on the pull request towards the end, and maybe we'll do this here, that highlight that. So what are the key trade-offs? What are the key decisions that are made? And you can then take this sort of top-down approach. It's sometimes called like things like bottom line up front. Like, just give me the bottom line. Don't show me the diff. Don't show me the changes. Give me the bottom line. What did this change? What did it impact? Are there any key decisions made inside of this PR? It might just be like, no, this is adding a few front-end components, a bit of CSS, in which case you're like, great, I'm going to scan through this, double check a few things if you're doing that review, and then just moving on. And then you start to get into this sort of higher level of review, which I've come to call sort of like artifact-based review. And this gets quite fun, because then you start looking around for what tools can I have that give me that higher level review. Reviewing an entity diagram, reviewing sort of an architecture diagram, etc. We talked about Storybook the other day. And I think that then also starts to feed into you as the human. Like, what are you looking at? Is a lot of time is those artifacts almost more so than you are just the diffs themselves. So just want to throw that in there as well, because that's almost the next stage once you start to implement the software factory, is how do I find better ways of making judgments and quicker judgments about the changes that are being made to the code base itself.
That's true. That's true. I mean, the point what you also said, right? Like, it will accelerate over time. And I think this is also what we see right now with the stage where we're at with our repo, is we've gotten an outline and we see that some things are working. We see that some things need some work and improvement. For example, the bug reporting. Okay, how do we go from finding bugs in the UI to making better requests in the first place, so that our code actually ships without these bugs in the first place? But also, how do we efficiently raise these bugs and have a loop that catches them? Because ideally, the reality is we've shipped this, and Philip, who will join us tomorrow, has stress tested the app quite extensively yesterday and discovered a couple of UI bugs that he has flagged to us. We will work through them now, and we'll discuss it in depth tomorrow, how we actually go about the bug fixing. But how can we close the loop to get almost perfect code in the first place and a better product experience shipping out of the box, rather than having to go in and still do verification? And right now we have to say, right, everything gets merged more or less autonomously, which is something where you would say this is a pretty high risk tolerance. And I think if we look at other production environments, maybe Lou, you can shed some light how PR reviews are done in practice, for example, at ONA. Is it something that's already fully automated, or is it something where the automations work with the human in the loop?
Yeah, exactly. And if you spend any time around AI and agents and you spend some time on social media, you'll realize that people start talking about, well, the bottleneck shifts. And the first bottleneck that comes up is review. And a lot of the things we're looking at today is, here are the ways that you can then optimize that review. Having the agent step in and review from all these different dimensions, reviewing correctness, reviewing security, etc., and starting to break down your review into different pieces and speed that up. What we've seen also at ONA, and one thing that we're now exploring as well, is compliant review, where we can have auto approvals. So the way this works is we have effectively almost like a classifier. So if you touch parts of the code base that we deem to be low risk, documentation, certain parts of the code base that are non-critical or don't touch any data and things like that, those are now actually auto-approved. And what that means is that it still has gone through the review process, and it's still, at least in our cases, the human still presses the review, or sorry, presses the merge. So they're still taking and assuming responsibility for it, which means that they shouldn't necessarily assume, okay, so the agent has done the review, should I not necessarily do anything? They might want to still make another pass at it themselves, but it's auto-approved, so it's unblocked. Because a lot of, if you're running with like SOX 2 or these other compliance frameworks, very typical sort of control is to have multiple reviewers on an individual PR. And then obviously, if you're trying to build a software factory and you're raising, hundreds, if not thousands of pull requests a day, that just becomes completely untenable. So you need some alternative way. So that's something that we've been doing internally and having great effect, actually. We have a blog post actually up on the website that has some charts as well about our velocity changes. I can actually find that in a second, and I can pull those up, because you can literally see the speed and the uptick of our throughput significantly improves, because what we're doing is taking all those low risk ones and just auto approving them, and then spending all our time when we're doing the actual review on the complex PRs and things like that. And that still allows us then to be compliant as well at the same time. So I think those types of practices will also find their way across the industry as well, to sort of tackle that review bottleneck. But it's not just review. The bottleneck is everywhere now. It shifts to review, deployment, testing, etc. You're really then just optimizing the entire flow from planning all the way to deployment, I feel. But review is the one where it sort of appears the most and has the most acute pain, but there already are ways of getting around it.
Totally. No, that's super interesting insight. Maybe we dive a little bit deeper into one of the reviews that the agent actually has done successfully. So let me bring this back up. So our workspace members invitation flow, we can quickly look into kind of the comment cycle and tie this back into the automations that have run to create this. So obviously, we had our PR review work based on an issue. So we had our feature issue here, if we just open this, so we can see, okay, we had our feature request that was open with our acceptance criteria, our dependencies, and then we can actually see how it worked through being in the backlog to the review cycle and ultimately done. If we go back into the PR view, we can actually see quite nicely what has happened, right? So we had our agent go in, comment on the individual files that have changed if they needed review or improvements. You can see in this case, there were like 3 comments initially that were ultimately resolved by the agent. Together with the review overview, we then trigger basically another run of our review, seeing that there were no changes actually fixed. And then we go in and see that there were new code changes that were actually triggered by the automation. Ultimately, we follow the flow, and again, it's all public, so you can go in and look at it yourself as well. We can see that we ultimately go into a verification pass. We can actually see that our checks pass as well that we had on the UI, and that the branch was ultimately deployed successful. Once this is all done, our automations then carry on with the new features and bug reports. As you can see right now, if you go into the issues, it's completely empty. So this is basically
just to jump in on that one, Zach. Did that one have it on? I know you set up also like post review sort of verification. I'm not sure if that one had it, but there you go. Okay, so people might have missed that as well then, right? So after you've merged it, you're then even doing the verification after.
Yeah. So we have basically the idea that we check that production actually works as a, again, kind of safety net. We had some issues. I don't think I have one on file yet, but I've seen where the post merger verification has not passed, and that automatically then creates an issue with a high priority to fix the bug, because that would obviously be in production already. So we want to close that loop, make sure that anything that is in production actually works, or at least doesn't cause an acute failure.
Yeah.
Again,
I love this as well, because I've been on teams in the past where this was like a practice we had to bring in. We have a big conversation about it because we were just merging pull requests and then production breaks, and then we don't know. I say, hey guys, can you attend your deployments? Can you deploy it? Then do a quick smoke test of the application or whatever. Just make sure nothing's broken. Of course, you have the automated test suites, but like attending the deployments usually is like generally a good idea. So it's just amazing that you have this as well, because it's just an additional safeguard and just like so simple to set up. This would have been meetings and alignments and discussions. What should we review post merge? And then all of it then is defined in your repo and configured, which is really sweet. And then it just, as much as you can, it's so cool, right? Because then your deployment process, as much as possible, is automated. So the amount of things that can go wrong just goes down, and you can then work on improving the process rather than actually just making sure you follow the process, which sometimes is the pain point as well.
Totally. I mean, obviously, at this stage, we see everything passing. We know there are still some UI bugs. So this feedback loop that we have right now isn't perfect yet, but that's the goal for the next few days, to make it perfect. So ensuring that everything that is shipped is actually to a high quality and to the standard that we expect. Again, bugs we'll touch base on tomorrow, which will be a very interesting episode. And so stay tuned for that. I'm just thinking, if we look at the automations and just quickly go through what else we have in store, just to see if anything else was not touched base on. So we've talked about the UI verification, the post-merge review. That's something that we've just shown. We obviously have some other automations that are not critical for the software factory, but it's quite interesting. We have a tweet drafter. So if you follow the account for the software factory, you'll find the handle in the banner. You'll see automated tweets that are being updated every day with the metrics, and that runs on a review, which is nice to have. Same for the daily metrics. We update that at the end of the day automatically, just to make sure we have an overview, how many lines of codes were written, how many PRs were merged, what's our test coverage, which on the website currently says 0, so that's a known bug that we will fix. Basically give us an idea where we're at. You can also see that the performance monitor, automation auditor, and the weekly recap haven't run yet. they will get active in the next few days as well. We do the performance monitoring already in one of the CI checks, so it is something that is being actively monitored, but not currently through the automation itself. That's again like one of those redundancies that we can improve on as we go along. And yeah, I think that covers our automation stack quite well. Again, actually, no, incident responder is a very interesting one as well. So that's the one that's connected to Sentry. So all the bugs that we capture through Sentry go through the incident responder. This runs on a schedule every 15 minutes, making sure that anything that gets reported either through client-side or server-side bugs gets picked up, gets assessed, and turned into a bug or into a log for us to review. I think that is the stack for now. I think we touched base on everything that makes the factory work as is. For tomorrow, as we said before, we'll go a bit more into the bug fixing, how we think about improving the UI, the UX, how we assess the loop quality, what we have done in the last few days to get bug fixes into the code. And for that, Philip will join us, which will be a very interesting episode. Lou, is there anything from your side that you still wanted to touch base on?
No, I think that's good for now. But what I would love to ask as well, Zach, is like if we do a mini retro, I'd be very curious to know, thus far, what has been the maybe challenging or insight from even just doing this now for a couple of days, because this has actually been my favorite episode so far. Looking at that screen, it's very much for me like looking at the software factory. When people talk about it and they're like, show me the thing, this feels like very much this is what we're talking about. But I'd love to know sort of what has been the sort of most maybe challenging side of it. But then I'm also quite curious as well what you're most excited for. Like, what is the automations you're most interested to play with and think might be the next exciting one for you?
I think the most challenging part is going from 0 to 1, right? Because there is a ramp. It's not like you write a prompt and say, hey, I want a software factory, go get it, even though the Owner platform is incredibly powerful. And a lot of the features that we're building are being built by Owner. So for example, the automations, you can define with Owner, it automatically deploys it into the automations view that you have just seen. So there's very little kind of manual work and configuration needed. But there is still a lot of thinking that goes in. For example, when we see what doesn't work, right? Like, why do we get a human review label if it's not actually needed? And what can we ultimately do to fix it? Those are the main challenges that we're still facing with kind of the setup and the factory itself. What I'm most excited about is actually now the phase where we improve the features that we have, where we add new features, because we can go away from thinking sequentially and making sure that our baseline is set up, because now we have the database, we have the app shell. We can now think about features that can really run in parallel and will be going much faster than we have before. So that's what I'm really excited about the next few days. Obviously, the bug fixing is a big part of this. How can we do this loop as automated as possible? How can we implement our user reviews as well? So this is one of the features that we put on the horizon for the next few days, is in-app bug reporting and then automatic triaging of the features and the bugs that are being suggested by you. So yeah, that's what I'm really, really excited about.
Super cool. If I could take 1 second, Zach, as well. Actually, I've pulled up here the blog post I was referencing. I just want people to see this real quick. Wait, hold on. That's showing you the wrong tab. Just give me 1 second, because I want to quickly show you this. Yes, this is the one. Let me throw this up on screen. So this is the blog post I was talking about. So talking about how now we auto-approve basically RPRs, these low-risk ones, and it increases our sort of lead time. The thing I think is quite cool about this, you can read this as well. You can find it on our blog and have a look. But if I scroll down here, you get to see some of the charts and have a guess, obviously, when this came into effect. So this is sort of our velocity. And then you see, obviously, that like goes through the floor around sort of March 13th when we sort of introduce this sort of time to first approval. And the same as well, some of the velocity charts that we have about our lead time and things. And these stats are actually also in Owner, the Owner Insights. But It just goes to show you, and again, this one's the opposite. So this is not about lead time and time to get through the pipeline, but it's the velocity that we're shipping with a number of deploys as well. Again, goes up because we're spending, there's a double effect to this is one, you're approving more PRs and getting stuff more through the pipe, but also you're reclaiming a lot of that now precious human attention that you can now spend on, let's say, the certain pull request or architecture that you actually want to. So just wanted to show that because I think it's just another, sort of good use case of how once you start driving this velocity up, how you can start to manage that. And again, for us, we're, SOC 2 compliance, we're a compliant organization as well. So this is not just for, small startups, just doing things scrappy. Obviously, we wanted to start from scratch with the product we're building now, but this also works in, in secure sort of context as well by this type of technique as well. So just wanted to show that. I think it will be quite interesting for some folks to see.
100%. I think, the increase in volume, but also, kind of coupling it with the quality is a whole game changer. And the interesting thing, obviously, is deploying it in an enterprise environment, which is something that Ona can help with. Great. Just quickly looking at one of the comments we had earlier, I think we touched base on it, right? The things that are off with the app. We'll go more into detail the next few days, especially in tomorrow's episode. And then we'll improve on the app, but also explain what we do to improve the flow, to improve the factory, and our agent loops. Great. Then thanks for joining today. Lou, great having you again. And we'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. for week 1 roundup. Thank you, everyone.
Amazing, Zach. Thank you.